Hi everyone, today we're looking at the Stagg XF Pourover brewer from Fellow Products. It's a flat-bottomed brewer made of stainless steel and it's got a double-walled thermal insulation here. And it's a little bit different to other pour-over brewers we stock, so you might want to alter your technique when you're brewing with this. So we're going to go through some of the sort of unique points about it and what kind of results you can expect in the cup. So this is a flat-bottomed brewer, kind of like you have with the Kalita Wave or the Espro Bloom, the April brewer or the December dripper. But the actual dimensions are a little bit different. It's quite a steep column. So the sides do slope in inside. It's not vertical like this, but there's a double wall, so you have a little a V shape in there. And then you have these nice ridges built into the bottom that help lift up your filter paper and what they call anti-clog draining holes. Anti-clog drainage holes to me suggest that it's meant to have ground coffee in there that you pour and they don't get clogged, but you're using a filter paper. So maybe it's a strange name for them, but it does drain really evenly across the whole bed. And then inside, you've also got two cool little things. You've got this funnel, which really helps when you're dosing the coffee into your filter paper. And then this they call their ratio aid and drip cup. For me, it's a drip cup. Once you're done brewing, you can just pop it on here to catch any drips. But the idea is that you can use these dots to dose out your coffee. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would use a set of scales rather than eyeballing it. Now that we've introduced the brewer, we're actually going to look at how to brew with it and what you might alter compared to brewing with a V60, for example. Because I feel like the type of filter papers, the dimensions of the brewer itself, and the way it retains heat means you can do things a little bit differently to making a typical V60 pour-over. Now, Fellow do make a Stagg XF pour-over set, which includes a glass decanter that sort of fits the dimensions of the brewer perfectly, and it affixes to the top. I'm not using that today, I'm just using the brewer as a standalone, so you need to find a jug that fits the brewer very nicely. And I would recommend finding something with a spout so that as the coffee drips in, air can escape to avoid unnecessary clogging or choking. So if you go directly onto a mug, it might be a little slower draining. The problem with doing this is that the base here is rubberized, so once it's on your brewer, it's going to move the jug around if you like to swill or spin the slurry in the bloom phase. If you want to do that, I'd recommend getting something like a wooden disc. This is from an origami dripper. And if I put it on here, I can spin the wooden disc without it gripping onto the jug and potentially knocking it over. But today I'm going to actually recommend using a chopstick to agitate the bloom and excavate any dry pockets of grounds to ensure they all got wet during the bloom. Rather than a small teaspoon like we did in the V60, this is just a little easier to sort of get into all the corners of the brewer. Because it's a bit more narrow and truncated, it's a taller column of coffee, and this is just a better tool for the job. So I've made some really nice brews with this using 36 grams of coffee to 600 grams of water. I feel like that's about the maximum you can get away with the brew of this size. After that, it starts to sort of get a bit choky and a bit cloggy. But if you want to do a single cup, I'd recommend about 18 grams of coffee to 300 grams of water. My favorite results so far have been using 24 grams of coffee to 400 grams of water, and that's what we're going to brew for you now. Okay, I have my coffee ground. It's a little bit coarser than I would use if I was brewing 24 grams in a V60 because the brewer is a little bit slower draining. And we'll put in some recommended grind settings in the description below across a few different grinders that we stock. You can also watch a video about our approach to grind sizes here. So let's get started. I've got boiling water. First thing is to really thoroughly rinse the filter paper. They tend to carry a little bit more flavor than other filter papers, so I really like to give them a thorough rinse. And this also preheats the brewer. The fact that it's double walled means that you're actually going to retain a bit more thermal stability during brewing, which is nice. So that's nicely rinsed and preheated. You can fold all of these crinkle cut filter paper edges in so that they're flat on the sides of the brewer. I've seen some people doing that and advocating that. Just far too much hassle for me to worry about, especially before I've had my morning coffee. So I'm going to take the dosing funnel and throw the coffee in. First thing to note is that if you're normally brewing with about twice as much water to coffee, you might want to increase that. I've been using about 3 times the weight of water to bloom with this. Again, because of the narrow bed and having to use a chopstick, I find it's a little easier to make sure everything is wet at that stage. So for 24 grams of coffee, about 70 to 75 grams of water is perfect. And then the trick here is to try and get every pocket of dry coffee wet. So if you've ever made brownies with a cheesecake topping and you swirl it through, that's what I'm thinking here. Just swirl and marble through the bed and you'll get everything wet. Now I tend to top up in about 50 gram bursts until I reach my target weight of 400 grams. I'm not too precious about pouring in concentric circles here. All I want to do is make sure the coffee is looking even on the top. So if I see a dry pocket, I'll aim for that. If I see a particularly light patch, I'll maybe avoid that. The goal here is to keep adding fresh solvent, let it drip through, and you'll achieve a really nice full even extraction. Best results I find with this recipe are getting in all your water by about 2.5 or 2 minutes 45, and all the water should then drain through in the next minute or so. There is a variation on this brew method that fellow advocate themselves called the fill-up method, where you just bloom and then add all the water you need for your brew, and it will drain through nice and slow. For me, you don't really get the benefit of pour-over filter brewing then, because you're not adding fresh solvent the whole while. It's sort of a quasi-immersion method. So you can absolutely experiment with it, but I like to just do a normal pour-over style. Now afterwards, people like to swill again at this point to create a flat bed and allow even drainage. Again, because I'm not using the wooden disc, I'm not going to spin, but a little shuffle is all you need, and it will avoid any grounds sticking to the filter papers that can get trapped in those ridges that the filter paper forms. So because the brew chamber is double walled and insulated, I can touch this and it's not hot at all, not even uncomfortable, which is really nice. Typically with a pour-over cone, you might have a handle so that you can actually remove it once you've done with your coffee. The lack of a handle makes it a little bit more portable. If you stuff your filter papers in the top, funnel and drip cap in the bottom, it doesn't take up much space, you can pop it in your backpack, and it's a really nice option for a travel brewer. So the coffee's now finished. I'm going to pop it onto the drip cap, and it's tempting now to just pop this to one side, drink your coffee, and then deal with it later, but it's better to get rid of the coffee now, avoid it sitting in contact for a long time with the brewer itself. That way you won't have the oils going rancid and imparting an off flavour into your next cup of coffee. Like with all filter coffee, I like to give it a stir before dosing it out, just to avoid it coming out in layers. And let's have a taste. Okay, so that's a little look at how I like to brew with the Stagg XF pour-over brewer. I was dubious before brewing with it that it was going to offer anything different to other pour-over brew methods. But having gotten to know it a bit better, I do think you get a little bit of a richer, rounder, sort of more warmed up cup profile. And it's probably due to the fact that the very steep design and the narrower coffee bed means more of your brew water is passing through the coffee bed, which sort of fills out your extraction a little bit and creates a bit more roundness to it, and definitely creates very sweet cups. And the double-walled insulation in the brewer is probably aiding that as well by keeping your slurry temperature nice and high. So I have been getting really nice results with it. If you are brewing at home and you're struggling or you want to have something to improve, you can email our online help desk, which is betterbrewing@workshopcoffee.com, and we're happy to help with any inquiries there. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.